A Brief History of Camp Chesterfield. Camp Chesterfield, the spiritual home of the Indiana Association of Spiritualists, the IAOS, is a local landmark that has historical, cultural, and spiritual significance for generations of Hoosiers since it was first established in 1890. The IAOS was initially formed as a spiritualist association in 1886 after a local resident, Dr. John W. Westerfield, visited Fraser's Grove, a Michigan spiritualist camp, in 1883. At this point, he decided that Indiana needed its own spiritualist campgrounds. This visit inspired him, along with others, to found the IAOS, and in 1886, a mass meeting of Hoosier spiritualists was held. And at this inaugural meeting, the Indiana Association of Spiritualists was formed and continues to thrive to this day. In 1890, the IAOS held its annual convention as a grove meeting and picnic on the Carol and Emily Bronnenberg property on the White River in Chesterfield. This particular annual meeting began the process for the association to purchase this land to make a permanent home for the IAOS. Just 1 year later, the 1891 season opened at what is now affectionately called Camp Chesterfield and has been fully operational ever since. Amazingly, in such a short amount of time, those early founders, members, and leaders were able to construct and build
a number of important landmarks, with the opening of Camp Chesterfield, which boasted a dining hall, lodging house, tent auditorium, 2 seance cabins, and an entry archway with a gatehouse. Historic Camp Chesterfield. Camp Chesterfield is listed on the prestigious National Park Service's National Register of Historic Places as an historic district. The overall design is typical of spiritualist camps that were quite common in the eastern and midwestern regions of the United States. Camp Chesterfield has strived to maintain the scale and general character typical of these types of camps, which began to flourish all over the United States during the late 1800s. Located just south of the banks of the White River, Camp Chesterfield is historically and culturally significant due to its evolution as a religious camp unique to the state of Indiana, and architecturally significant due to its many and varied structures which offer a remarkable glimpse into the past. Camp Chesterfield is truly a spiritual center of light. Early buildings were originally tents or simple wooden shanties or summer cabins built on stone foundations. These rustic and crude dwellings were frequently moved about the grounds in the growing years of Camp Chesterfield. A number of these were even moved and joined together to create even larger dwellings, making them more sturdy and permanent. As the spiritualist movement gained in significance and popularity, the Indiana Association of Spiritualists began to construct public buildings to keep up with the ever-growing demand and huge influx of visitors to the grounds. Soon, a number of structures were built which firmly planted spiritualism and Camp Chesterfield on the map as an important part of Indiana's rich religious history. Between the years 1891 and 1900, a number of buildings were erected. The office building in 1892, the bazaar building in 1893, the auditorium circa 1891, as well as stables for horses, a grocery store, an ice cream parlor, and 18 mediums cottages. Of these, a goodly number of the original cottages still exist in some form or another. As the camp grew and changed over time, shanties evolved into year-round homes, with outhouses eventually giving way to indoor plumbing and bathroom additions. Open porches became enclosed and garages replacing carriage houses. Through it all, however, the overall size and scale of Camp Chesterfield remains as it was, allowing modern visitors to glimpse and on some level experience the way it was when it first began. The entrance gate to Camp Chesterfield has changed a number of times over the years. The gatehouse at one time served as the secretary's office until proper office space could be made. Sometimes called the boarding house, the lodging house was the precursor structure to the hotels which were eventually built on the grounds of Camp Chesterfield: the Sunflower, the Lily, and the Western. In fact, a portion of the old lodging house was moved and attached to the Sunflower Hotel in an attempt to expand the new hotel's accommodations even more and to make space for other needed buildings. The present-day administration building sits where the old lodging house used to stand. During the years in between, this prime location saw a variety of buildings on this particular site, mainly a grocery store and several versions of an ice cream parlor, which transformed and changed as the camp grew, until finally the structure was moved to where the Tree of Life bookstore is now located. Hot Indiana summers with no air conditioning made it a necessary pleasure to eat ice cream in order to stay cool. A very popular diversion from the summer heat was to get an ice cream cone or a cold Coke. A staple on Camp Chesterfield's grounds was the ice cream parlor. In addition, Camp Chesterfield at one time or another hosted other businesses throughout its history, such as a beauty shop, barber shop, grocery store, bazaar, gift shop, bookstore, dining hall, and guest house, in addition to the hotels. Over the years, Camp Chesterfield has witnessed the construction of 3 primary structures in this same location. The original structure, circa 1891, the old auditorium, was initially a large tent with a raised wooden platform for message work. In 1903, it was replaced with a new building which was called the second auditorium. This building stood until 1953, when it was raised to make way for the present structure, the Cathedral of the Woods. The cathedral was dedicated on June 26, 1954. Every summer during high season, June through September, all message services, regular church services, special events, and ordination and consecration ceremonies were conducted in the auditorium. Hundreds of people attended such functions. Afterwards, visitors would go to the dining hall for refreshments, sit for readings, attend seances, or merely walk the beautiful grounds. The old wooden dining hall was built in 1918, replacing an even older dining hall. This new dining hall had brick ovens built behind the structure to bake fresh bread and was used until the mid-1950s, when the current Maxon cafeteria was constructed. Many of the tables and chairs are still being utilized in the Maxon cafeteria today that were used all those years ago. The Ladies' Bazaar, the Luther Memorial Cottage, and currently the Labyrinth all occupied this same location on the grounds of Camp Chesterfield. This site was the home of the 2-story Ladies' Bazaar, later known as Luther Memorial Cottage, and at one time was used as the headquarters for the very active and often controversial Ladies' League. This labyrinth is now located on the former site of the Luther Memorial Cottage, which stood from the early days of Camp Chesterfield's formation, but was raised after a fire and many years of harsh weather conditions had taken its toll on this historic building. It was originally built in 1893. Camp Chesterfield began as an actual camp where visitors would come to have readings and attend message services in the open air. Eventually, the area called the Toadstools was made to allow mediums to give messages to the many people who would visit the grounds during high season. An early version of a psychic fair, this historically and architecturally significant area served a very important purpose in the history of the IAOS and Camp Chesterfield. Well-known Camp Chesterfield mediums that used these tables and chairs had their names engraved on the cement tables. The Sunflower Hotel was built in 1914 to help keep pace with the ever-increasing number of people who needed lodging. The old lodging house, located where the current administration building is, could not accommodate all the guests and their needs. The Sunflower Hotel was considered to be a modern hotel, equipped with 70 rooms at a cost of $6,887.70, roughly equivalent to $160,000 today. Between the years 1922 to 1924, the Sunflower expanded with the addition of 40 more rooms. More modern plumbing was installed, and a section of the former lodging house was moved and added to the north side of the hotel. Always fully booked during high season, the Sunflower Hotel was a home away from home for many generations of spiritualists visiting Camp Chesterfield. Not in active use today, the nonprofit group Friends of Camp Chesterfield Foundation is in the process of raising funds to begin restoration on the Sunflower with the hope of returning it to its original glory. The Lily Hotel, a twin to the Sunflower Hotel, was in many ways the more majestic and grander of the two hotels that greeted visitors coming through the front gate. Sadly, in 1996, the Lily Hotel burned down, set on fire by arsonists, and lost forever. Built in 1949, the Western Hotel was designed after the typical roadside inns of the era. A 2.5-story structure, it is an excellent example of American roadside architecture. The concrete foundation supports a concrete block structure with brick veneer. The floors are precast concrete and the roof is flat with a 12-inch overhang. The windows are all steel casements. The first floor is elevated 6 feet off the ground, so the lower level could be equipped with full-sized windows. The 1-story porch spans the entire front and wraps around for 10 feet on the side of the building, featuring very simple steel columns and railings. Equipped with a period lobby and Art Deco check-in counter, it has 2 floors featuring both single and twin rooms with baths. The basement houses a large and spacious women's dormitory that allows for communal accommodations and a smaller men's dormitory. This hotel boasts being the first fireproof building in the state of Indiana, a nostalgic hotel that allows visitors to step back in time upon entering its front doors. During the summer, visitors sit in the old-style gliders on the front porch chatting and exchanging messages they receive from loved ones. The Memorial Fountain. This stone fountain was built circa 1930. It is now surrounded by the Memorial Garden, Camp Chesterfield Cemetery, where the ashes of mediums, residents, and members are interred. It is located near the front of the grounds and serves as an entryway for visitors to proceed to the common area in the center of the grounds called Vesper Grove. The rustic river stone was used in various displays around camp, most notably on the stone bridges in the valley and the mediums' cottages located at 414 Eastern Drive, but was gradually replaced with ashlar stone that can now be found on many of the buildings around camp built in the mid-1950s, for example Maxon Cafeteria, Cathedral, and Head Art Gallery and Museum. The fountain has changed a number of times over the years. Early Shanty. By the middle of the 1890s, most of the mediums at Camp Chesterfield had, at the very least, a shanty. Usually these crude structures started out as a large tent, which eventually had flooring added and walls installed to make it into a small, 2-room, cracker box-style dwelling. One room was devoted wholly for use as a seance or reading room, and the other was used as a general all-purpose living space. These photographs are of the medium's shanty at what is now 411 Eastern Drive. Please note the tent to the right of the shanty, which was likely used by another medium who had yet been able to convert the tent into an actual dwelling, or a visitor who planned to stay for a spell to attend message services and to sit for readings. Once called the Old Parkinson Cottage, this shanty was one of the earliest structures to be built at Camp Chesterfield. Frequently moved and renovated, many of the original shanties in use today are hardly recognizable due to extensive additions and renovations. The Mary Beatty Shanty. This photograph features John Cunningham's center with Mary Beatty to his left and others in front of the cottage located at 314 Eastern Drive and is known as the Mary Beatty Cottage. It is an excellent example of the early shanties that were simple in design and practical in their construction. The side view shows a small addition to the back of this shanty, which was quite common after just a few years of building the original structure. As mediums began to stay for longer periods, they needed more living space and modern conveniences like kitchens. Grandview Drive Shanties. The walking path in front of the cottages on Grandview Drive serves as the only pathway to the front of these residences. Initially, this path was used to walk the horses to the barns and stables located at the end of Western Drive. In the early years, these plots were preferred because they offered a beautiful view of the campgrounds. However, as activities began to be more centered in the old auditorium, where large groups of people would be milling about before and after the services, mediums began to move their cottages to the other side of the grounds. Once the cathedral was built, a number of mediums waited for cottages to open up on Parkview and Eastern Drive in order to relocate to that site of camp. A number of the cottages on Grandview Drive, though, are original and are historically and architecturally significant. The cottages located at 307 and 311 Grandview Drive contribute to the context of the camp in that they are designed as summer or seasonal cottages. The cottage at 315 Grandview Drive is known as the Parkinson Cottage and was built in 1895 as a 4-room shanty. The foundation is stone with a wood frame. The original clapboard siding is covered with hardboard siding today. The front porch has been enclosed, but the cottage still retains its 4-room plan and the proportions that were typical of most cottages from that time period. The cottage, located at 405 Grandview Drive, was built around the same time as the Parkinson Cottage. The original cottage, located in the center of the structure, can be seen most clearly while looking at the residence from the north side. This cottage offers an excellent example of how consecutive renovations and additions to the original structure occurred in phases. The front porch was eventually enclosed, the back portion added, and a garage built to make the original shanty the home it is today. The unusual roofline shows clearly the different construction projects that occurred over the past 100 years. The cottage, known as the Jessup Cottage, was built in 1895 by W.C. Jessup, an early leader and pioneer of the Indiana Association of Spiritualists. The foundation features a chamfered edge concrete block motif, and it was built with a wood frame construction. Aluminum siding now covers the original clapboard siding, and the gable roof features a dormer. The original open-air front porch is now enclosed, and a gable accent has been added to give attention to the front door. This cottage also features many consecutive renovations which elongated the original shanty that can be seen in the center of the structure. Old Broadway or Parkview Drive. In the early years of Camp Chesterfield, shanties or summer cabins were built at a dizzying pace due to a huge public interest in spiritualism. Lined up neatly on Old Broadway, what is now Parkview Drive, these cottages served an important purpose in allowing mediums to move from being seasonal occupants to year-long residents. Many of these cottages are still in use today, maintaining their original purpose, offering a place to give readings and conduct seances for visitors, and as a residence for the medium living there. Although many of the cottages have been expanded, renovated, added on, and changed over the years, the original shanty can often be distinguished quite easily when observed closely. This is known as the McKee Cottage, built in 1895 by A.L. Morris. The foundation is rusticated concrete block with a wood frame structure. Hardboard siding now covers the original clapboard siding. The hip roof features a front dormer window and retains its original 4-room floor plan. Originally, it is likely that this cottage was pieced together from several different shanties to create the 4-room configuration. This is one of the most original cottages on the grounds, retaining the proportions that were typical of the earlier cottages. The O'Neill Cottage, 1895. Today, a number of the original cottages exist largely as they did when the camp was first started. This cottage, located at 322 Parkview, is a prime example of how the original shanties looked back in the late 1800s. Originally known as the O'Neill Cottage, it was built in 1895 by Tom O'Neill, an early board member, vice president, and president of the Indiana Association of Spiritualists. This one-story cottage maintains its original scale and size, with an addition added later on to the rear of the abode. The front section of the cottage features the original seance room that is still in use today. It stretches across the entire front of the dwelling and likely served a dual purpose as a living area and seance room. The famous roundhouse at 415 Eastern Drive was originally an old gatehouse that was likely moved onto the grounds to be utilized as a dwelling and seance room. This photograph features several spirits keeping company with May Wilhite, one of its early inhabitants. The rudimentary round shape is evident when viewing the house from the front. Of course, additions and renovations have taken place over the years to modernize it and add to its size, but the original round cottage is still as it was in those early years. Next to this cottage is the Mendenhall Mosteller Cottage at 419 Eastern Drive, which was built in 1892 by Dr. Mendenhall and Major Bittners. This one-story structure is a combination of 2 cottages, the center portion of the cottage being the original shanty, and then another shanty from the same time period, but from another part of camp, was moved and attached to the existing shanty as an economical means of creating an addition to the front of the cottage. Later, an addition was built doubling the length of the original cottage. The foundation is concrete with a wood structure. Underneath the vinyl siding is original clapboard siding that clearly shows the evolution of the cottage over time. Each section has a different width of clapboard. The gabled roof features clipped ridges on the main part of the roof. This home has long been known as the Riffle Cottage, named after the Reverend Mabel Riffle, who was the longtime IAOS secretary and moving force behind Camp Chesterfield's huge expansion between the 1910s and 1960s. This structure features the original seance room built in 1904. The shutters on the front windows were closed when a seance was in session. This 1 1/2 story cottage maintains its original scale and size. The cottage has an open front porch where people sat while waiting to enter the seance room or to have a reading. The foundation is concrete with a wood frame structure. The gable roof features a typical shed dormer with windows, which serves as an excellent example of architecture common during the time period this home was built. Reverend Mabel Riffle was a leading force in the development of Camp Chesterfield and was a very influential persona in the spiritualist movement between the years 1909 and 1961. She spearheaded the construction of the Sunflower in 1914 and Lily Hotel in 1922, the Chapel in 1936, as well as the Western Hotel in 1949, the Art Deco Cathedral of the Woods in 1954, the Maxon Cafeteria in 1955, and the Head Art Gallery and Museum in 1955. In 1936, with the help of a number of strong men and several horses, Founders Rock was painstakingly moved from the banks of the White River at the edge of Camp Chesterfield's property to its current location in front of the administration building. On August 31, 1937, Founders Rock was formally dedicated as a memorial to the founders of the Indiana Association of Spiritualists and Camp Chesterfield. The Chapel in the Woods. Originally built as the Lyceum Building in 1936, this structure remains largely unchanged from its original construction. Today, it is affectionately called the Chapel in the Woods, and it is regularly utilized for weekly church and message services. The chapel is at the heart of Camp Chesterfield, hosting many important events that take place on the grounds throughout the year. From weddings to funerals, ordinations to dedications, lectures to church and message services, the Chapel in the Woods has been an integral part of Camp Chesterfield's religious and social life for many generations. In addition to the sanctuary on the main floor, a classroom is located in the basement, as well as the Reverend Evelyn Regal Seance Room. The Healing Sanctuary, a meditation room open to the public, may be accessed via the rear entrance. Unique to the state of Indiana, the Garden of Prayer is a prime architectural example of a European-style grotto that was established as a site for spiritual meditation and religious devotion. Originally only one room, it was equipped with an altar, guardian angels, and a statue of Jesus Christ, where devotees prayed and lit devotion candles. Sometime later, the grotto was expanded to include a second room featuring a stained glass window and another statue of Jesus where visitors may meditate in silence. In 1941, the Sentinel Angel was placed outside the entrance of the Garden of Prayer as a memorial to the Mack family. When Camp Chesterfield dedicated new structures or displays, these frequently became the photographic backdrop for special events. Please note the Sentinel Angel in the photograph of the resident mediums taken around the time of its placement. The Trail of Religion. In this shady grove, near the center of the grounds, is a semicircular memorial unique to Camp Chesterfield called the Trail of Religion. Dedicated in 1943 to the world's greatest religious leaders, this religious display features the limestone busts of Lao Tzu, Buddha, Confucius, Vardhamana, Osiris, Zoroaster, Abraham, Muhammad, and Zeus, each with eyes turned toward the center of the circle where stands the pedestal supporting the bust of Jesus Christ. One of many imaginative and beautiful structures, the Dr. J. E. Het Art Gallery and Museum incorporates a graceful fusing of stone, steel, and glass. The building was designed by Arthur B. Henning and encircles an area of 200 by 75 feet, divided into 3 nearly equal-sized rooms connected by a unique glass corridor. The Het Art Gallery was dedicated with a ribbon-cutting ceremony on August 31, 1955, under the direction of the Reverend Clifford Bias, Reverend Mabel Riffle, and Dr. J. E. Het, the generous benefactor who made the construction of the museum possible. American Indian Memorial. This monument, located on Inspiration Hill, is a memorial erected to honor Native Americans. The statue features a life-size figure of an American Indian atop an 8-foot pedestal, palms upturned, face looking toward the source of all light and life. Erected in 1940, the Native American statue is a tribute to the deep connection spiritualism has with Native American peoples. The Totem Pole. The majestic totem pole located on Inspiration Hill next to the Native American Memorial was originally commissioned in 1961 and formally dedicated in 1962. What originally began as a message from Spirit to a member and longtime Camp Chesterfield supporter, this project became a reality through determination and steadfast resolve to make it a reality. The totem pole represents the story of an eagle that discovered a salmon. It illustrates a legend of how salmon came to the waters of British Columbia, Canada. The reading of the totem pole, from top to its base, depicts first an eagle, then a salmon, next a whale, a chief, and finally a bear. The Lighthouse. The lighthouse, located to the far right, has been the subject of legends and lore for many generations of spiritualists, members, residents, and visitors as to its original purpose and function. Some believed it to have been built originally to harness energy from the natural vortex that is located in the valley next and below to the log cabin cottage. Others thought it to be some sort of pyramid built as a memorial to cultures that utilize these structures in their rituals and ceremonies. In fact, its original purpose was much more practical and necessary. It was merely a lighthouse built to have light at the far end of the grounds to light the way for those who needed to board their horses in the barns that were once located in the area of this site of camp. Later, a loudspeaker was placed in the lighthouse in order for visitors and residents to hear announcements at this end of the grounds. Although it has been unused for many years, its unique structure and purpose are still a testament to the ingenuity of the early spiritualists who worked to make Camp Chesterfield modern. Message service on the Grove. In the 1950s and 1960s, before central air conditioning, message and church services were frequently held outside on the Grove. Iron benches were placed upon the asphalt tarmac in order to accommodate as many people as possible. The Grove is the area located next to the Memorial Garden and Fountain between Park and Grandview Drives in the center of the grounds. Often standing room only, these services were quite popular among visitors to Camp Chesterfield during the summer season. The minister or chairperson would offer a sermon from the pulpit. The stone benches on either side of the pulpit were where the mediums would sit in preparation for giving spirit messages to those in attendance. The sunflower, a symbol of spiritualism. Since around 1892, the sunflower has been an important symbol of spiritualism. Throughout Camp Chesterfield, visitors notice how homes and buildings are often decorated with sunflower motifs. This is because of its strong connection to spiritualism. The sunflower is native to the United States, but has been transplanted all over the world, just like spiritualism. In 1948, spiritualism was recognized as a religion in 38 nations, making it one of 3 American-made religions to be exported rather than imported to the United States. The motto for spiritualism is, "As the sunflower turns its face to the light of the sun, so let spiritualism turn the face of humanity to the light of the truth." Since a sunflower always turns towards the sun, so do spiritualists turn toward the light of God. A sturdy and hardy plant, the sunflower has a strong central stalk that is well grounded to hold it up straight and tall, and it is also a rich source of minerals and vitamins. Spiritualism as well stresses having a strong character in tandem with both physical and spiritual healing.